everyone. It is our final talk of the afternoon here in the Flip-Floperator Auditorium, and I'm getting better at saying that, I think, but it's taken some work. Our final talk is a pre-recorded talk by Maalvika Bhat. Maalvika is a junior at Olin College, an engineer, designer, published writer, and researcher currently working in the San Francisco Bay Area. She's going to be talking to us about Jupyter Notebooks. So she will be in the chat answering questions as her talk proceeds. So by all means, say hi to her there. Take it away.
Hello, everyone. My name is Maalvika Bhat, and today I'm here on behalf of the Environmental Data and Governance Initiative, or EDGI for short. Today, I will be speaking about using Jupyter Notebooks to empower the public with environmental data. I hope to give you some insight into our project's goals and our approach to data processing, then give you a demo on one of our Jupyter Notebooks, talk about our use of notebooks at public events, other uses for our work, and our next steps. But first, a little introduction to EDGI. We are a network of over 175 members from more than 80 different academic institutions and nonprofits across North America, composed foremost by grassroots volunteer efforts. We are an international organization, though most of our membership is based in the United States. EDGI, through an effort to protect environmental data in the wake of President Trump's election in 2016, has served as a watchdog group. EDGI created an unprecedented project to duplicate and monitor repositories of public data that are vital to environmental health research and knowledge. More broadly, our organization aims to work with the productive frictions between data justice and the long-standing principles of environmental justice. Environmental data justice is a movement which calls for increased, open, and participatory data to document environmental racism and inequality. Earlier this year, we developed a group within EDGI called the Environmental Enforcement Watch, or EW for short. Here are the goals: to draw large-scale public attention to the lack of environmental enforcement, and to inform EPA visions of alternative forms of public engagement. You may be wondering, why now? Violations of federal environmental laws are chronic and routine. Former United States Environmental Protection Agency employees themselves have spoken out in criticism of EPA efficacy, and enforcement has declined precipitously under the Trump administration. Until very recently, just the beginning of September, enforcement was effectively on hold due to COVID-19. However, data about environmental enforcement is legally available to anyone. The United States Community Right to Know Act allows us to see all of the violations, enforcement, and compliance data for our nation. This data can be used to inform our activism. Specifically, we can see data on the Clean Water Act, the Clean Air Act, and the Resource Conservation and Recovery Act, which governs hazardous wastes in the United States. Greenhouse gases are not regulated in the United States, but data from the Greenhouse Gas Reporting Program is available. Unfortunately, the data is only accessible through an EPA website called ECHO, which stands for Enforcement and Compliance Online. You can find it at echo.epa.gov. But the way ECHO is organized is not at all user-friendly. Only the last 12 quarters are visible through the EPA interface. The records going back farther than that are only accessible via really complicated CSV downloads. It is important to note that the data is organized based on how the EPA itself works. If we ask the question, who is this database for, we can see that it's built to make it easy for facilities to report, and specifically not to make it clear to communities what impacts they might experience from it. This includes things like how worried they should be about non-compliant facilities in their areas of concern. And if you're not an expert, understanding this data is incredibly difficult. So what's the good news? EDGI has made this data easier to query to answer specific questions people and communities might have. All workshops begin by making a customized report on violations, inspections, and enforcement of environmental laws in the congressional district, state, watershed, or city of interest to participants. The reports are based on data from the EPA's ECHO database and are aggregated through our Jupyter Notebooks. EDGI effectively copied the EPA's data into our own database hosted at Stony Brook University. It is updated every 2 weeks. We archived it like this instead of querying the EPA directly in case the EPA decided to remove the data under the new administration. And then we use the Jupyter Notebooks, written in Python and hosted on Google Colab, which allows people to easily pull results from EDGI's copied Echo database and create tailored reports based on state or municipality. The notebooks allow people to identify specific facilities and areas in least compliance with these federal laws, as well as add some contextual data that helps paint a picture of what is going on, such as demographics, prison proximity, watershed, and more. The limits are only the EPA data itself and as far and as fast as we can code. EDGI has worked with university classes, local environmental groups, and held discussions with other environmental organizations and former EPA administrators using these notebooks. One notable partner is the Sunrise Movement, the group which spearheaded the Green New Deal. The Green New Deal is a congressional resolution that lays out a grand plan for the United States to tackle climate change. Introduced by Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez of New York and Senator Edward Markey of Massachusetts, the proposal calls on the federal government to wean the United States from fossil fuels and to curb planet-warming greenhouse gas emissions across the country. It also aims to guarantee new, high-paying jobs in clean energy industries. Now I will show you a demo of one of our Jupyter Notebooks. This is our Jupyter Notebook, which is right now being hosted in Google Colab, and it was made for an event in partnership with Sunrise Boston, so all of the congressional districts have to do with Massachusetts. I've gone ahead and run the first 2 cells, which just take a little bit, but are basically importing the main code libraries. And then after that, we can go ahead and choose a congressional district to further look at. And we use the Folium library to create these maps. Here you can hover over it and see that this is Congressional District 4, 8, and 7. Let's say I want to take a further look at Congressional District 4. So I can go to the next cell, and that gives us a drop-down list of all the options. This next cell takes a look at what kind of facilities the EPA tracks within this district and across Massachusetts. So we can go ahead and run this. This might take a little bit just because it's sorting through so many facilities, but here we can see that there are 24,000 facilities in Massachusetts currently being tracked by the ECHO database. And within this district, there's only 2,282. Under that, there's a breakdown of how many facilities are regulated under specific acts, and we can take a closer look at each and every one of them. Let's say right now we want to look at the greenhouse gas emissions in this district. So we can run over to the next cell and choose how we want to zoom in on the data. This is great because we get some context about what the EPA looks at, and everything is linked to the EPA website as well. Let's run this cell. Greenhouse gas emissions is already chosen in the cell, which is fantastic. We can move on to chart trends. So here we can look at the data from this district compared with Massachusetts as a whole. This shows us that, and then we can go ahead and rank and map facilities within this district. This will show us the top 20 facilities, but like we saw before, there are only 14 facilities within this district, so it shows us those. And then this next cell gives us a better visualization of where these facilities are within the congressional district. This is nice because we can hover over it and get a sense of where everything is. This last cell just shows us how to access our files. So all the images and data tables we've created by running this notebook can be saved and accessed at a later time. I also wanted to talk to you about some of the other notebooks we are in the process of creating and finalizing. we are working on an environmental justice notebook, which I'm so excited about. The EPA defines environmental justice as the fair treatment and meaningful involvement of all people with respect to the development, implementation, and enforcement of environmental laws. EDGI says that this goal will only be achieved when everyone enjoys the same degree of protection from environmental and health hazards and equal access to the decision-making process to have a healthy environment in which to live, learn, and work. The government and corporations perpetuate environmental racism through the placement of oil pipelines, chemical plants, toxic waste dumps, and polluting factories, which expose low-income minority communities to known carcinogens, contaminated water, and other harmful pollutants at a higher rate than predominantly white, affluent communities. This is all documented, so it is critical for us to make that data publicly, easily accessible, and understandable. The data visualizations in this environmental justice notebook will explore the disproportionate impact of environmental hazards on people of color. We are also working on a congressional district report cards project. The report cards will analyze and present data on violations of environmental laws, inspections of polluting facilities, and enforcement actions by the EPA for the congressional districts of each representative on the House Energy and Commerce Committee. The goal here is to shed light on the chronic and routine violations of environmental laws and the failure to enforce these environmental laws. The Environmental Enforcement Watch will format the data for each district and state into a public report card for release in October. We will compile an online repository for these report cards of the 76 Congresspeople who sit on the House Energy and Commerce Committee. Let's talk next steps. We really want to experiment with using the PySpark API. We hope to use PySpark to avoid having to maintain either the MySQL or Postgres databases. With PySpark, we could store the EPA Echo CSVs in a Google Drive folder that is much more intuitive to interact with. We hope to continue hosting Environmental Enforcement Watch events and workshops during which we discuss data science, data visualization, report making, research contextualization, and story gathering. The workshops will continue documenting and analyzing all forms of environmental harms, including corporate and government practices of manipulating and withholding data, as well as government failures to adequately collect and use data. We want to keep facilitating this collaborative, action-based research that creates civic technologies, environmental data infrastructures, and equitable and transparent data care practices. With goals of data transparency, we recognize that justice looks different in this age of datafication. We can use the tools at our disposal to advocate for better data practices and intelligently critique the limitations created by this facility-centric approach that the ECHO database provides us. A long-term goal of EDGI is to inform EPA visions of alternative forms of public engagement, basically a Green New Deal of environmental data. Our projects are all open source, so we would love for you to join us and be a part of our passionate, diverse team. You can find our organization, EDGI, at envirodatagov.org and at environmentalenforcementwatch.org. And follow us on Twitter at envirodatagov and at EEW_network. Thank you so much for listening. It has been an honor to present at PyCon Australia, and I've really enjoyed learning alongside all of you. I would like to shout out my wonderful team who has made this project possible: Kelsey Breseman, Steve Hansen, Gil Jang, Eric Nost, Chris Sellers, Paul St. Denis, Lourdes Vera, Sara Wylie, and EDGI. Thank you.